Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ayushi, and I'll be the host with you all today for today's session. As you all are aware, that our summit for 2022 has already started from today. For those who have been attending the summit since morning, you must have been a very busy day and have lot and lots of informative day with lots and lots of information. We will be continuing to do the same for the next 5 days and answer all your queries or doubts in regards to the course options, career pathways, skill assessment pathways, migration pathways, and future opportunities. So, our experts will be waiting to take your questions. Please post your questions in the chat box and we'll be answering the queries at the end of the session. Also, we have some very exciting giveaways for our attendees. We want to take the session deep and interactive, and we encourage you all to post the questions and feedback. We have bumper cash prizes to claim for the ones who leave the most descriptive review under the Facebook post. So I'm also sharing the link in the comment box for you all to access. Tag your friends and family at the rate Aussizz Education Summit 2022 in the comment section along with your feedback. The most participative audience member from the chat box is eligible for a free giveaways such as free PTE coaching, IELTS coaching, PR consultations, etc. We encourage you to come and be a part of our summit. I'm sure those of you who have attended the niche courses seminar, which was just before this, would have got the information in regards to the courses, universities, and career options. We are now guiding you all towards the skill assessment and the migration pathways for the niche courses such as actuarial science, agriculture science, lab medicine, psychology, physiotherapy, occupational therapy, speech pathology, etc. So if you are currently doing this course or wants to pursue and wish to know the future pathways, you are here at the right place. Get your friends to join the session as well so they can have all their doubts cleared and also avail the perks of the session. Along with us, we have two of our most experienced migration agents. We are joined by Mr. Nirav Patel, who is the director of Aussizz Berby and is also one of the most experienced and sought after registered migration agents in Victoria. He believes in empowering the student community with the right guidance and has had a significant impact on their journey while settling down in Australia. Hello, Nirav.
Hello, Ayushi.
We are also joined by Mr. Parth Patel, who is a registered migration agent and one of the most decorated migration agents at Aussizz Group. He is well versed about the occupation ceilings and the state nomination requirements and has shaped the lives of thousands of migrants to settle in Australia permanently. Thank you so much. Now I'll pass it on the information for you all, and Neera will be taking over from here.
Hello, everyone. Can you see my screen now? So yeah, so as Ayushi has given a brief and strong introduction of this session and about this event, so we are doing specifically this Education Summit 2022, to helping the students across the world, when they have a difficulty in terms of choosing the different courses and they want a career guidance, not only in terms of about their permanent residency pathways, but some of the students would like to choose the course which can help to enhance their career in that particular occupation, going into the IT, accounting, engineering, or medical related different occupations, or agriculture related occupations. So by attending this event, in different sessions, specialized in different occupations, as I mentioned, you will get a detailed knowledge about each courses and the permanent residencies pathways for all of those occupations. So I would highly recommend to attend most of the sessions, so you get all the information about those occupations, and you can also invite your friends or family who is looking after to come to Australia and who needs any information about these occupations. They can easily get all those details at one place. And usually it is difficult to find the right answers or right career guidance when you want to choose or when you want to make any decision about your career or choosing a country. And this will be a definitely important event for those kind of students and applicants across the world. So as I used to say that this information or this session will be about the medical related occupation and agriculture related occupations. So we will be discussing about the permanent residency pathways and the assessment pathways. What are the again career opportunities into these occupations, and as like this courses session has already been done around 2 to 4. If you have attended that sessions, you should have gotten idea about the different universities or colleges which provide the courses of these occupations. And that session was about like knowledge about the fees for particular that course in different universities, and what are the benefits of studying into the regional and all. However, like if you have missed that session, so we will briefly cover some of the courses as well as in this session, so that will help you to understand the basic criteria. Apart from that, if you still have like your questions which cannot be solved about your courses or something, you can contact us at our nearest offices, and our education consultant who are a qualified education agent counselor, so they should help you to solve all your queries in terms of enrollment, and all our registered migration agents across all the offices can help you to sort out your permanent residency pathways into this occupation. So let's just start the session, and in between, let's say if you have any questions in relation to particular occupations or like any course or something, you can also put it into the chat box. So we will covering those questions at the end one by one. And I would also request everyone to share this live link on your social media profile, so that whoever needs it now, they can attend it straight away, rather than previous registration. So let's just start. So as Ayushi mentioned that like we are having a few giveaway like the bumper contest, like which can be sharing the feedback about the sessions on the social media, and there are different prizes in relation to this one. And as she said that there will be like free online coaching as well, or 485 visa consultation, or a free peer consultations for some of them who are like most participating into the chat, and who can share this link most, they will be awarded with one of this one. So guys, make this one as a like interactive session, so it will help you and everyone to understand the requirement for skill assessments and the permanent residency pathways into this category. Yeah, so mainly we will be discussing today about the what are the importance of medical and agriculture sector, particularly during this pandemic time, and the different kind of agriculture and medical related occupations. So what are the courses and pathways related to agriculture and medical related occupations? Then Mr. Parth will be covering about the skill assessment process for different occupations, and from different skill assessment authorities like VET-Assess, Trade Recognition Australia, and the different medical related occupations like speech pathologists, psychologists, physiotherapists, So those are the one of the important occupations, and it's important to know requirements of skill assessment sometime before starting or like enrolling into particular course, because sometimes we have like many applicants who do usually these kind of courses, and they are not aware about the skill assessment requirement, and they found it difficult to meet the skill assessment requirement at the end, and they then like drop their idea about studying this one, or they try to change into the different career, because they are not able to meet the skill assessment requirement. So please stay tuned till the end, as the skill assessment is most important part of this session, and that will be covered by Mr. Parth, and he will be able to solve all your queries about that occupation, And again, like at the end, we will covering up the questions from the chat box, So as everyone know that, like these medical and agriculture sectors are really grown up into this pandemic time. It was like already uh, most of the important industries, across the world, even before the pandemic as well, as like that can be considered as an essential, in everyone's life, because everyone needs like medical, everyone needs a food, So that's why these two industries are one of the pioneer, in all over the world. But during this pandemic, because of the COVID-19, everyone now has understand the importance of these sectors. So previously, everyone used to take this as a casual, because no one was actually experienced such thing, before. Like so, when they experienced like during these last 2 years that what is the importance of medical and what is the importance of the agriculture sectors in current world. So now all the countries across the world are focusing into these sectors and investing and boosting sectors, in this one specifically. so that even in the future there could be like any other like virus coming up, then they have like availability of all the labors and availability of all kind of resources at that time, like building up hospitals and the building up the distribution chain line for the agriculture sector strongly, which can be affected by the virus as well in the future. So because in maybe in last 100 years, no one has seen such kind of pandemic, there might be a Spanish flu, cholera and all in previous a decade, but everyone like who experienced that one, they might not be alive now, so we are experiencing, or this generation is experiencing this one is the first time. So we should consider it as like this as an opportunity, and each and every government is trying to put their best, to grow this one. And specifically, Australia is also one of that one, who is like believing that these two industries should be focused in upcoming years, as we can deal any kind of such pandemic in the future in a better way and in a faster way, So as they say that like pandemic has definitely changed everyone like living style and the working style. Everyone start to work like from home, everyone's work start to study online. So those kind of things pandemic has changed. And apart from that, like, agriculture and forestry industry has mentioned that become one of the essentials as well in Australians recovery, economic prosperity and food security. Because even if there was a lockdown in across the Australia in different states, these two industry were the one which was not like, closed down. Because if they close down this such industry, then I would say like it's difficult to handle the pandemic, so that's why like they want more and more like skilled person into these sectors so they can fulfill those requirements. And due to the lockdown or due to the border closing for last 2 years, almost in Australia, it created a lots of labor shortages, all over Australia in all the industry, not only in this one, but like shortage in like restaurant industry, or maybe shortage in you can say in the service industry, that we can somehow justifiable that we can sustain without that, but if there is a shortage in the medical or agriculture sectors, which are the most important part of everyone's life, health and the food. So we should have more prepared into these sectors, and there should not be any like labor shortages in this one in the future if any such thing happens again, so that's why government will be more focusing on developing resources for the labor in future, definitely. And as we can see that like there will be more than 250,000 jobs will be available in this kind of industries, so how immigration or like how government will fulfill this one, so government is going to fulfill this all the positions, not only maybe in Australia, like not maybe all Australian citizen or permanent residents maybe go and fulfill this position, so they need to try to hire from the global market, so they need to go and hire people or like invite people from different countries to study in Australia, to work in Australia in this kind of occupations, and fulfill those vacancies, They have in between also introduced specific labor agreement scheme, for the important agriculture sectors as well, for food industry. So they are planning to bring the people from all over the world to fulfill those sectors, like agriculture industries on a 403 visas as well, temporarily. But that could be a temporary solution, but they really require uh, to find a permanent solution for this one. So that's why there will be more and more permanent residencies pathways available in the future as well. And they have already started, as we have seen that during this time, immigration has introduced the priority migration skilled occupation list, So that was like on top of that, the medium and long term list, short term list, and the regional occupation list, that were three common lists. But due to the demand of the COVID, they had to come with the priority migration skilled occupation list. So that occupations are prioritized in terms of getting visas during the pandemic, like, or getting the exemptions easily from overseas. Even if you are on a temporary visas during the border closure, if you're working into those industries, the immigration has invited and approved the travel exemptions, where it was very difficult to get the travel exemptions for all other people from or like outside of Australia when there was a border close, So medical laboratory scientist, hospital, retail, and industrial pharmacist are one of the occupations, which were included into the PMSO list, and it is still now. And these occupations has their own important into this COVID duration. So we will be discussing about these occupations as well in detail, and the skill assessment and the permanent residence pathways as well next. So as I said that during this pandemic, the job advertisement market has really grown across all the Australia, and job advertisement postings are increased by as you can see that more than 35.7%, before COVID level. And in regional specifically, it was increased by 73.4%. So it can easily see that it can easily be seen that there is a labor shortage in Australia. Everyone is struggling to find a labor. So even the small employer who want to find an employee, it's not that easy these days. So everyone who is looking for a job currently in Australia, it's easy to get it compared to before COVID level, as they have closed the border for 2 years almost. So they have lost that migration from overseas. So that was like a huge number. Usually maybe around 200, 300,000 people coming every year, or migrating on temporary visas or permanent residency visas. So that has been stopped completely during last 2 years, So it create a panic in the human resource, in Australia. So that's why each and every employer is struggling to find an employee, And there was a lockdown, so maybe due to lockdown, not many people able to work because of the traveling or because of the COVID exposures and all, So that's why, uh, I would say there is a very high requirement of the labor in Australia. So, but particularly currently it is for each and every occupations, like in all kind of industries. But this shortage will be difficult to fulfill in medical and agriculture kind of related occupations, specifically in medical related occupations, because maybe for all other kind of industry, it might be easy to find an employee now as the border is open, and there might not be specific skills required, So in medical related occupations, applicant must need to have a specialized qualification, or studying in nursing, studying in laboratory scientist, studying in physiotherapist and all. So it's not that easy to find such resources, So as not maybe everyone wants to study those occupations, So now, yeah, we know that there will be definitely a skill shortage in the future. So definitely there will be a demand in Australia in terms of the migration, in terms of the employment, So that's why Australia will be targeting this kind of applicants most in next few years. So whoever plan to study this kind of courses in Australia, that's really good decision, I would say, comparing other occupations. I'm not saying that it will be difficult for other occupations. Each occupation might have the different requirement, but government views on medical and agriculture related occupations are, I would say, different. And definitely they will be focusing on recruiting more and more people into those occupations, and that way there will be more migration into these occupations from offshore outside of Australia. And whoever currently studying here, it will be easy for them to get the nominations from different states or an employer, So I would say again that if you have planned to do these courses, these kind of courses, you did a right decision. So as we can see that Tasmania has highest percentage of job advertised, because in regional, as isolate from all over the Australia, as a Tasmania, it might be difficult to find the employees over there. Apart from that, in all the regionals across all the kind of states, it's increasing. It doesn't say anywhere the job market has been decreased, So everyone is looking for an employee in this difficult time. So this is proven that Australia requires labor actually, Now, as I said, occupations which can be in currently in shortage and and demand in the future, So these are the occupations which we can see that Australian government will target in next few years. So we have covered up in this one most of the occupations. It's not just medical and agriculture, but at least if you have started or plan to study these courses as well, then you still have your future bright. But I would say, like as we mentioned here, accountant, management accountant, taxation accountant. Now people will say, okay, accounting is very difficult to get a permanent residency. We know that it's difficult because why difficult? Because there is lots of competition, okay, in accounting. Otherwise, if you meet any specific state requirement, if you follow any particular pathways, in terms of employer sponsored visas or like studying in regional, like in different state, then there are pathways available. Like we see in WA, like accountants have been invited with 75, 80 points as well, So everyone needs the right guidance and right decision to study these courses. Otherwise, as per immigration and as per the Australian demand, these courses are still in shortage and definitely will be requiring in future as well. So there are less chances that this will be removed from the immigration. So again, accountant, management accountant, taxation accountant, external auditor, internal auditor, quantity surveyor, urban and regional planner, civil engineer, geotechnical engineer, structural engineer, transport engineer, electrical engineer, mechanical engineer, mining engineer, petroleum engineer. So these engineering occupations have been invited by skill independent categories as well, some of them as well, because like 189 skill independent visa was specifically for applicants who have higher points, and immigration used to invite based on the points and the occupation. So periodically, immigration is nowadays only inviting occupations which they require, highly. So maybe medical related occupation, again agriculture related occupation, and few engineering level occupations. So immigration still has a shortage into the skill independent category for those occupations. However, accounting related occupations should be or like applicants should focus more on uh, I would say state categories option and the employee sponsored visas option. Employee sponsored visa would be easier if you have an experience. If you find a job, they can sponsor you and you can get your permanent residency straight away. And however, we'll be saying here that it's agriculture consultant, again, agriculture scientist, veterinarian. So again, veterinarian occupations, we have seen very rare applicants choosing this one, So there are also invites coming in these occupations: sonographer, optometrist, orthoptist, hospital pharmacist, retail pharmacist, again, speech pathologist, in IT like multimedia specialist, developer programmer, software engineer, ICT security specialist, clinical psychologist, educational psychologist, and organization psychologist. So these are the occupations which are still in demand and will be in demand, apart from the one of the common occupations which everyone aware, which is nursing. So we are not saying that nursing will not be in demand in future. It is still health related occupation. People will be getting permanent residency in that one, and immigration still require more and more nurses. Because of the COVID, they know the importance of the nurses, but if there are different kind of courses available apart from the nurses, where there will be less competition than the nurses, and still there is a pathway to permanent residency, then why everyone is choosing nursing only? Because we know that everyone wants to grow and in their career or specifically, but somehow maybe everyone want to settle down as well here in Australia. So they try to choose the courses which can lead to permanent residencies as well. So I would say, like, rather than like choosing just a nursing occupation, you can try to understand the importance of these medical related occupations, which is still in demand, which will be in the demand, and understand the requirement of the skill assessment. And you will be like, uh, separated from the competition, I would say. So if there will be 1,000 nurses who is waiting for the invite, if you are a sonographer, maybe 10, maybe 10 people applying. So you are cutting down your competition straight away. So that's why just don't follow like that you just do a nursing as that is a peer pathway, but there are other medical related occupations as well, like these retail pharmacists, hospital pharmacists and all. So try to know the requirement of their skill assessment. If you think that you can be easily able to meet those requirements, you can like apply for your permanent residency pathway based on this after studying in Australia. So that's why just focus on different occupations as well, rather than just nursing. So in horticulture, worker occupations in demand, I would say like gardener, arborist, landscape gardener, greenkeeper, nursery person, these are the like occupations into the nursery and horticulture industry. And as you can see that the immigration or the labor shortage department has released this list where they display that what is the need or what are the needs of this kind of occupations in Australia, in near future. So gardener, arborist, and like landscaper, landscape gardener are very strong in demand, in future. Like greenkeeper, nursery person still in the moderate, but those three occupations are highly demand, as so. But we never seen anyone studying gardening or arborist or landscape gardener courses. We know up to now that it was difficult to get the temporary graduate visa for provisional skill assessment, and like that occupations are in the regional occupation list, the short-term occupation list. But immigration is planning to introduce the getting a temporary visas for 2 years without provisional skill assessment as well from July. That will be for the temporary duration, but definitely you don't require any kind of skill assessment from medium and long-term list to get your TR. If you study these course for 2 years, you can get your TR, you can do your skill assessment, and you can apply for your permanent residency based on this one as well. So studying these courses into the regional will definitely help you to get your permanent residency. And when they say that these occupations are in demand, for future, they are not talking about 1 year, 2 year, so they are talking about like quite extensive years, like I would say 4 or 5 years, 6 years demand about these occupations. So please try to understand the requirement of the skill assessment, as Parth will be explaining this one at the end. And if you still have any questions while like I'm talking, and I'm not able to solve your questions, answers in this discussion, then please put it into the chat box and we will try to solve it, at the end. So apart from like horticulture in the health professionals, so what are the strong demands of the occupation? So those are like sonographer, optometrist, orthoptist, hospital pharmacist, retail pharmacist, speech pathologist, So these are definitely in high demand, So strong ones are health diagnostics and promotion officer, health therapy professionals, So you can see that like nursing are not in that strong way, but it's in the definitely 100% in the moderate, because definitely immigration or even Australia require nurses in in all the states, in all kind of hospitals department, so that they can fulfill the national shortages about the nurses. But apart from nurses, these are the occupations as well, which is maybe more demand than the nurses, but people still choose the nursing courses, because they have heard by knowing that their friends, their family might have get PR based on nurses, and they want to go with the same pathway, So we know that one, that you will get a permanent residency based on that. But if there are any like better options available, again, other than the nurses, you should try to understand that requirement as well, and try to focus and go something different rather than where everyone goes actually. So as I said, physiotherapy, speech pathologists, and anesthetists. So all those are moderate, strong, and again moderate, respectively, for demand in Australia in future. So occupation ceilings for 2020 and 2021, you can see for agriculture and forestry scientists, 1,000 and 1,000. So we know that these thousands, it's not that easy to get it. Actually, maybe there might be very less number of applicants who have studied and applied in this category. So that's why immigration hardly get fulfilled this kind of quota, every year. Whereas we know that accountants, maybe IT occupations, or some of the engineering occupations, or some of the trade occupations get fooled as per their quota. If there are 2,000 accountants required, they will get 2,000 accountants, if they will invite. But if they want to invite agriculture applicants, and they have a quota to invite them, but they are not getting enough applicants in that category. So that's why quota is there, but applicants are not there, So that's also you need to understand that immigration is not able to fulfill their quota into these categories like life scientists, medical laboratory scientists, speech and the audiologist, psychologists and physiotherapists categories as well. So they will try to fulfill that quota as long, doesn't matter if they are in Australia or from offshore, because if you are applying into this occupation from outside of Australia as well, you will be considering as a prioritize in your application comparing to IT accounting, because IT accounting will be quite competitive as well. Okay. Whereas in this one, as they're getting very less number of applicants, so they don't want to lose the skilled applicants, Doesn't matter how many points you have, doesn't matter like you like have worked in your field or not, as long as you are meeting the requirement as per immigration in terms of the total like a minimum points, skill assessment, and whatever the state guidelines requirement, there are high chances of getting the invitation into these categories. So in agriculture related occupations, there are not only few, there are like number of occupations, So agriculture technician, agricultural scientist, agricultural consultant, agricultural engineer, nursery person, vegetable grower, gardener, arborist, as I said, landscape gardener, greenkeeper, primary products inspectors, fisheries officer, meat inspector, quarantine officer. So you see there are a number of occupations available. So as each occupation might be assessed by different authorities, as like there is a weight assess, which is written underneath of the occupations, Engine Australia, then the Trade Recognition Australia. So Parth will be covering about these occupation skill assessment requirements, and he will guide you like what will be the requirements exactly for from each authority in different occupations group, and what will be the qualification requirement as well. And some of the occupation require a bachelor or higher level of qualification. Some require a trade level of qualification, So that will be discussed by Parth, in the later part of the session. In medical occupations, again, like we know that medical laboratory technician, scientist, psychologist, physiologist, physiotherapist, pathology collector, hospital pharmacist, retail pharmacist, speech pathologist. So these are the occupations again which are in the demand. Some of the occupation into this category require assessment plus registration as well. Okay, so you might need to get a registration to work in Australia, and then getting a skill assessment will help you to get the permanent residency in Australia, in these occupations. So qualification required, as I said, this has been covered already into the earlier session by our education counselor. But however, like we will discuss it in the brief that like, nursery person requires certificate 3 in nursery operation, gardener will require a certificate 3 in horticulture, arborist will be assessed with certificate 3 in arboriculture, then landscape gardener will be assessed by certificate 3 in landscape construction, greenkeeper will be assessed with certificate 3 in sports stuff management. So if you want to specifically assess your occupation into this category, you require minimum this qualification. Okay, and then whatever will be the requirement for the skill assessment in terms of your experience, you need to meet that requirement, and then you will get your skill assessment. So not like these kind of courses usually, as I said, in the regional occupation list or the short-term skilled occupation list. So up to now, people was not used to study, people were not used to study these kind of courses. But now, as I said, there are no provisional skill assessment requirement, at least for short term. There might be applicants who will be studying in this one and getting PR as well easily, because there will be less applicants, available at the first batch, because up to now, we know that based on our experience, based on our client database, hardly few applicants used to study these courses in last 4 or 5 years, So studying and like, studying now in these courses and getting skill assessment, you will be like, the first batch who will be doing permanent residency, maybe based on this one, after studying. Yes, so now I would like, Mr. Parth to take over this session, and Parth will, as I said, will help you to understand the requirement for the each skill assessment authority, like Beta says, like Engine Australia therapy, or like Trade Recognition Australia, TRA, and the different medical related occupations. And he will be covering about the minimum qualification requirement, experience requirement, or if there will be any registration requirement for this like for these kind of occupations. Again, while he will be discussing, if he will not be able to answer your questions in his discussion, you can ask your questions as well into the chat box, and we will be definitely answering the like all of your questions at the end. Okay, thank you everyone.
Thank you so much, Nirav. I think the session that you've held is pretty informative, and it has got so much information, because a lot of students would not know that there are so many sub occupations within the same occupation. Let's say if it's agriculture, there are so many sub occupations within that. It's so good to know all these things. I'm sure you guys are interactive, and keep posting your questions, because Nirav and Parth will be answering all your questions at the end of the session. Parth will be covering the skill assessment part. Parth, you can take over from here.
Sure, thanks. I hope you can see my screen and you can hear me as well.
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Myself, Parth Patel. I am a registered migration agent and director at Aussizz Hawthorne branch. Um, thank you, Nirav, for explaining about the courses and demand, and what we are expecting in future about that occupations as well. What are the benefits of studying that kind of courses? Now I will move further and I will explain about what are the requirements to get a skills assessment or how it can lead to permanent residency if you study that kind of courses, how you can become qualified towards permanent residency. Um, to start with, the first authority I would like to discuss is about 𝐸𝐸𝐻𝐻. 𝐸𝐸𝐻𝐻 is the authority which assesses more than 360 occupations on behalf of Department of Home Affairs to see whether the applicants are qualified in that occupations so that you can move ahead and you can apply for permanent residency because most of the visa programs which leads to permanent residency or which itself is a permanent residency requires you to have a skills assessment. Um, which is the mandatory requirement for most of the visas, you can say. And that's why you will have to get your skills assessed from authority, for example, 𝐸𝐸𝐻𝐻. 𝐸𝐸𝐻𝐻, for example, they have different requirements for the skills assessment depending on the occupation type. They have divided occupations into five groups, five categories: Group A, Group B, Group C, D, and E. To start with Group A occupations, the basic requirement for you to qualify if your occupation is listed as Group A occupation is that you need relevant qualification at least at a level of a bachelor's degree or higher degree. Um, that degree can be completed anywhere. It could be in Australia, it could be outside of Australia. If qualification is outside of Australia, you'll have to make sure that your qualification is equivalent to Australian bachelor's degree or a higher degree, because just having a bachelor's degree in your country does not let you qualify for the requirements for the skills assessment. How you can verify whether your qualification is at a level of a bachelor's degree or not, that could be um, through applying for skills assessment itself, that they will tell you whether you are getting a positive outcome or not. Or the second option is that when you register through us for the skills assessment process, we can check on behalf of you. We have credentials which 𝐸𝐸𝐻𝐻 used to see whether your qualification is equivalent to Australian bachelor's or higher degree. So first requirement is you must have relevant qualification. If you have a bachelor's degree but it's not highly relevant to your nominated occupation, for example, if we are looking at agricultural scientist, you need study relevant to agriculture science, animal science, things like that, then they may be able to consider your qualification as relevant. Now, relevant on 𝐸𝐸𝐻𝐻's website, they haven't provided any specific definition as such, but generally speaking, 65% of content, if it is relevant to the nominated occupation, that study is considered as relevant to that occupation. However, 𝐸𝐸𝐻𝐻 has way of broad way of making sure whether your qualification is relevant or not. So it's not just that they will go with your qualification, but they will also look at country of education. They will see whether in that country, if you are studying some other qualification and with that qualification also you are becoming qualified as agricultural scientist, for example, that kind of qualification also will be considered relevant. Or the cases where the qualification is not highly relevant, but then that is in your employment is in that kind of nature, then they can consider that qualification is relevant. But simple criteria, if you look at, then in a way you can say 65% of content is relevant to that occupation, then it's considered as closely relevant study. So first basic requirement is having relevant study. Second basic requirement is having at least 1 year of post qualification experience. Post qualification means the qualification which is relevant. After that, you have 1 year of experience. The requirement of that 1 year of experience is that experience must be highly relevant to or closely relevant to that nominated occupation. Generally, it's like highly relevant, they say. Um, Secondly, that experience must be at least 20 hours per week. So you must have worked for 20 hours every week for 52 weeks, which is 1 year. That experience must be paid. If it is volunteer intern experience, that cannot be considered at a proper level you have worked, then that can be considered. Also, that experience must have been gained within last 5 years, when you are applying for the skills assessment. So if you are applying for skills assessment today, for example, your experience must be within last 5 years, that is 2017, January 2017 onwards, you have 1 year of experience. So 2017 Feb to Feb 2018, if you have 1 year experience, then you can possibly qualify for the criteria. So having relevant qualification and 1 year of relevant experience will only let you qualify for the skills assessment. Occupations which we are discussing today, some of the occupations which are Group A occupations are agricultural scientist, agricultural consultant, industrial pharmacist. These are the occupations which falls under Group A. That means you need relevant qualification and relevant experience to qualify, and that experience must have been gained within last 5 years. There is no requirement that when you have achieved your qualification, it could be 10 years old, 15 years old, it does not matter. The second category is Group B occupations, where there are multiple options through which you can get a skills assessment. These are the occupations which may not necessarily need relevant qualification because it's a bit low level occupation, or Vetasis have seen that in certain countries, people who haven't studied relevant qualification but still qualify in that kind of occupation without relevant study. So that's where these occupations are considered as Group B occupation, where if you don't have relevant study, you may still qualify. So first option is if you have relevant qualification, relevant 1 year experience, very same as like similar to this Group A occupations. So option one is very clear to you guys, I guess. Option two is generally for the people that they have at least diploma level qualification, addition in addition to that qualification, which is bachelor's in relevant field. So for example, if I look at vegetable grower, if they don't have study relevant to agriculture, they have studied something else, um, they still need a bachelor's degree. Actually, I think there is mistake over here, but they still need a bachelor's degree, which could be in any field, but then on top of that you need a diploma qualification um, in relevant field, for example agricultural science, something like that, and they need 1 year of experience. So if they have qualification plus if they have bachelor's degree not relevant to that occupation, but they have additional diploma and 1 year experience, they can still qualify for the program. Or the third option is for the people who have at least diploma level qualification in the relevant field plus at least 2 years of experience they have, then they can qualify for the program. So that's for the Group B occupations. Group C occupations such as agricultural technician, primary product inspector, fisheries officers, meat inspector, quarantine officer, this kind of occupations requires qualification at a level of diploma plus 1 year experience. That's the standard requirement. So first option is standard, where your qualification must be relevant and 1 year of experience is required. The only difference is the level of qualification may vary. So Group A occupations, Group B occupations requires generally bachelor's degree, and Group C occupation requires at least diploma qualification, for example. So diploma level qualification plus at least 1 year of experience. Option two is diploma level qualification, but then that's not highly relevant, but they have at least certificate for level qualification, which is highly relevant, then they need 1 year of experience. Option third is again diploma level qualification plus at least. So Group C occupation, the option third is actually there's some problem with the PPD, I guess, but then the option three is generally where they need at least a diploma level qualification plus 2 years of experience if your qualification is not relevant at all. So if you have got diploma in, for example, business, diploma of business, and you got 2 years of experience as, for example, primary product inspector, in that case you are still eligible for skills assessment. So your qualification needs to be at least at a level of diploma. If it is higher, no problem with that, but then at least 2 years of experience is required when the qualification is not relevant at all. If you got diploma in irrelevant field, for example diploma of business again, but then the person also got certificate for, but that is in horticulture, for example agriculture, for example, because they got certificate for additional qualification which is relevant, that's why they still need just 1 year experience instead of 2 years of experience when the qualification is not relevant. Um, on top of that, there is another option which is for pre-qualification employment. That is, you got a qualification, but then you only got qualification after you work for a few years. So in the cases where you have few years of experience, and then on that grounds, if you are applying for the skills assessment, in that case, you just need 3 years of experience, on 3 years of experience, in relevant to the nominated occupation, on top of that 1 year of basic requirement. So total 4 years of experience you need, 3 years pre-qualification plus 1 year of experience within last 5 years. In that case, if your qualification is completed within sorry, your qualification got completed after the experience as well, it is still fine. The fourth category is Group D occupations. In that category, there are three options. First category is where if you have certificate for level qualification plus 1 year experience, which is again the basic requirement, then they can get a skills assessment. The difference is the occupations are at lower level, and that's where they just need certificate for level qualification. Option two is certificate for without relevant field of study and at least 2 years of experience. So if study is not relevant, 2 years, same as group C occupation when the study is not relevant, 2 years experience. And option three is where if applicant got certificate three in highly relevant field and at least 3 years of experience, then they can qualify. So generally speaking, if you look at the criteria, if you have relevant qualification, it makes it much more easier. Otherwise, you need more years of experience, because if you haven't studied relevant in the relevant field, it takes more time for you to become qualified in that occupations. And that's where if you have just 1 year, 2 years experience, it may not help. You may need more years of experience. That's group D occupations. And then last group is group E, where if you have diploma level qualification and at least 1 year of experience, then only they can give you a skills assessment. So both diploma and experience must be highly relevant to the nominated occupation. It's very similar to group A occupations. The only difference is in group A occupation, they require a bachelor's or a higher degree. In this category, group E category, they just need a diploma level qualification. But in both cases, if your qualification or if your experience is not relevant, you cannot apply for the skills assessment. So such occupations are anesthetic technician, cardiac technician, medical technicians, not elsewhere classified. These are the occupations which are assessed by VETASYS. The next authority is TRA. TRA is Trades Recognition Australia. They do assessment for trade occupations. They have three pathways, three options to get a skills assessment. The first option is if you have got relevant qualification in Australia or overseas, and you have 3 years of full-time experience or equivalent part-time experience gained after the qualification, then you can qualify for the skills assessment. For example, if I'm looking for a chef, which is a trade occupation, the relevant study they look for is certificate 4 in commercial cookery, for example. After that, they need 3 years of full-time experience, or they need 6 years of part-time experience, or if it is combination, then 2 years full-time, 2 years part-time, something like that. That way, they have to complete 3 years full-time experience, then they can get a skills assessment. This program is known as Overseas Skilled Assessment Program or Migration Skilled Assessment Program. Like they got multiple programs, so that way I'm saying. The option two is for the people who haven't got qualification, they haven't studied anything, but then they got the study, they got the certificate by RPL, that is recognized prior learning. So they got few years of experience earlier, like in past overseas or in Australia. Based on that, they can go to institutes, RPO institutes, who can issue them certificate directly based on the skills they have gained earlier. That is known as RPL, recognized prior learning. So the people who got RPL certificate and then after getting the certificate, they worked for 3 years full time or equivalent part time, then they can qualify. Very similar to option one, that is gaining qualification and then having 3 years of experience. The only difference is in the option one, they need study by studying the program, and option two is by recognized prior learning, that is through their experience or internships. And option three is generally for the people who haven't got any qualification at all, but then they got 6 years of full-time or equivalent part-time experience. Um, that could be any time during, before, or after the RPL certificate, they can still qualify. So option three is generally for the people who have a few years of experience back home, but in that country they don't need any study to qualify. For example, a chef, they don't, like for example, if I look at India, they don't need any study to become qualified cook or chef. So they start working as a cook or chef, for example. In that cases, they haven't got any study. So for example, that students are here in Australia on some other visa, student visa or the dependent visa or whatever it could be. Um, and then they came over here and then they got RPL certificate, recognized learning certificate. In that case, the problem is they just got the certificate now. If they would like to get a skills assessment, they will have to wait for another 3 years full time as per the option two. But in that case, if they prove that they had 6 years of full time experience, they can qualify under the option number three. So then they can straight away apply for skills assessment. They don't have to wait for another 3 years of program. These option one, two, and three are programs under Offshore Skills Assessment Program or under Migration Skills Assessment Program. For some occupations, they can qualify through OSAP, Overseas Skilled Assessment Program, where TRA is the authority which issue them certificate, but then the assessment will be done by another organizations called RTOs. And for them, the requirement is bit comparatively lesser, which is having 5 years of experience if they don't have any qualification at all, something like that. In that case, they don't need RPL as well, but it depends on which occupation you are going for. Not every occupation is eligible for that OSAP program where other RTO providers will do your assessment. And then there is another option which is not mentioned over here, that is generally for people who have studied in Australia by actually studying, not getting RPL certificate. So people who have studied over here in the relevant field, and then 1 year if they work full time, which is very popular program called Job Ready program. A lot of people are doing that, getting a skills assessment through that program. So it's a job ready program where people have to complete 1 year full time experience equivalent to 17, 20 hours, 25 hours of work after completing Australian qualification. The benefit of that pathway is that they will qualify with just 1 year of full time experience, but then they must have got qualification in Australia. In these three categories, the qualification can be anywhere. That's the difference. However, if you would like to get RPL, then that qualification will be in Australia. So option two, option three is pretty much, you can say, qualification you will gain. That is RPL qualification you will gain in Australia. The next occupation is medical laboratory scientists, and that assessment is done by AIMS. For them, the requirement is that either there are two options. First option is if you have studied a course which is approved by them, accredited by them, you are eligible for the skills assessment straight away, meeting the English requirement. If your qualification is not accredited by the skills assessment authority AIMS, in that case, the basic requirement is that you need acceptable science degree. Acceptable means this is that a degree having some specific subjects. If you have studied that subjects, then only your degree will be considered as acceptable science degree. Generally, that kind of degrees are degrees where you have studied that kind of courses outside of Australia. Because if you look at most of the universities in Australia, the courses will be accredited. But you still have to make sure if you're planning to study this kind of courses, you should first see whether your course is accredited. Because if it is accredited, it will be much more easier for you to get a skills assessment. If it is not, then you will see how it's difficult. I'll explain you. Also, to add, medical laboratory scientists is the occupation where immigration is inviting applicants with even 65 the minimum points for 189 visa. Same way, the state sponsorship program, the state governments are sponsoring people with even minimum points, 50 points for 491, 60 points for 190 visa. They are sponsoring people with that many points even as long as you qualify their criteria. So that's a good career. It has a strong demand as well in future as well. So I think, and so it will help you in terms of permanent residence. It will help you in terms of finding securing jobs as well. That's why I strongly recommend that this is also a good option to look for. So the basic requirement is having science, acceptable science degree, having some specific subjects. Secondly, they require 2 years of experience full time or part time equivalent, that is 4 years part time in diagnostic medical pathology work, and that is also within last 5 years. Then only you can qualify. So the difference I was telling is that if you have studied a course which is accredited, you don't need any experience to get a skills assessment. Um, that means you will straight away qualify after completing the study. But if you have studied a course which is not accredited by them, you need 2 years of full-time experience. That is generally for the people who have studied outside of Australia, or people who have studied in Australia but that course is not accredited by the relevant authority 𝐬𝐴MS. So it's very important that you check whether the course is accredited, fully accredited or not. Um, Fully accreditation courses, there are probably two possibilities. First one is, if you would like to work, then there is a registration authority. Depending on the occupation, some occupations require you to register with the relevant authority first to work. And second thing is skills assessment for migration matters, and that are two different things. So it may be possible that you may get a skills assessment but you may not get registration, or if you get registration you may have to meet additional requirements to get a skills assessment. However, for most of the occupations, health related occupations, if you got registration, pretty much you are eligible for the skills assessment. Depends on the occupation though. So the primary qualification, the acceptable qualification we were looking at is generally 3 to 4 years of degree, bachelor's degree, or master's degree. If it is accredited, it's much more easier, as I said. So the qualifications, example of qualifications are bachelor's of medical laboratory science, master's of medical laboratory science, bachelor's of biomedical science, where specialization is laboratory medicine, masters of laboratory medicine, or the master of clinical pathology. These are just the examples. The title could be something else, you never know. But you will have to, as I said, if you are planning to study something in Australia, then you have to make sure whether the course is accredited. Otherwise you will have to wait for another 2 years of experience. That is also considering that you finished your study and you got you got job quickly, then you can qualify. But finding job is also a bit difficult when you are not having permanent residency. So I strongly recommend you to look for a course which is fully accredited by them. The other occupation which is assessed by 𝐬𝐴MS is medical laboratory technician. That occupation requires just diploma level qualification, or it could be even if you have got higher qualification, you can still qualify. Minimum 2 years of experience is compulsory, same as medical laboratory scientist if your qualification is not accredited. Um, 𝐬𝐴MS does not require successful completion of professional. Okay, so I missed to add one more thing in the scientist category. So if your qualification is not accredited, it's not just that you have to have 2 years of experience. You also need to clear exam, which is available I think only twice a year. So you will have to sit for the exam. If you clear the exam, then only you will get a skills assessment as medical laboratory scientist. If you cannot clear the exam, they will give you a skills assessment under the technician category. So it's mentioned over here in the note. Applicants who fail the 𝐬𝐴MS professional examination still qualifies for assessment under this occupation. People whose qualification is accredited, easier. You don't have to get experience. You don't have to get the exam. So it's much more easier. That's why it's important that you choose right course. And both occupations as of now department is prioritizing because of the COVID, because of the concerns we have to come out of the situation. So you never know, the COVID situation will really go on for 2 years of time, but this occupation scientist, it's there in the high demand category, high demand list for immigration for many years, and that's where there is a good potential, good possibility that you will be able to apply for permanent residency comparatively easier. Skills assessment for psychologists. For psychologists, there are specific requirements mainly for the education and the English requirement. For the qualification requirements, you must have completed at least 6 years of study in psychology. That is, for example, bachelor's degree leading to a master's degree, which is 4+2 program, which is 6 years in Australia. Or if you are holding unconditional, that is full general registration as a psychologist in Australia, when you are applying for skills assessment, then also you can qualify. So in order to get general registration, you still need to complete that 6 years of study. But for example, people who haven't studied in Australia, they may qualify through general registration. They will have to follow the registration requirements though, which is by another authority. And they are required to score English 7 in each of the 4 modules. If you cannot score in single attempt, you can combine two multiple exam, which if it is taken within last 6 months, and you got 7 in each of the components. Um, for example, if you appeared for the exam, you scored 777 in one of the module, you got 6.5. That is overall you have a score of 7, and then minimum you got 6.5 in one of the module. Next time you set for the exam, you still scored 7 overall, like you scored 6.5 in other module, and the other three modules you still scored 7. That is 7 overall, minimum 6.5. But then 6.5 last time you got in listening, now in this time you got in reading, for example. That's fine as long as you have scored 7 in the other module where you left with that 7 score, you can still qualify, considering the exams are taken within 6 months. And secondly, that minimum score you achieved in each of the 4 modules was 6.5. Overall score must be 7, minimum score is 6.5. Physiotherapist, for physiotherapist, there are multiple options, though it's pretty much similar in a way. The first option is if you have studied a course which is approved program, approved study, which you are looking at like AIMS authority. Same way, if you have studied a course which is approved by them, easier. Or if you go through council issued certificate of substantial equivalence after successful completing the equivalence of qualification pathway. So that pathway is only available for certain country like students who have studied from certain countries. It's only for those. So for example, Canada, Colombia, Austria, Europe, I mean, not Europe, but then specifically countries in that continent. If you have studied from particularly that countries, then only you can qualify. That is through equivalence of qualification pathway. So you will get a certificate saying yes, you are qualified. Third option is generally for the people whose qualification, whose country is not in that list, which is equivalence of qualification. Through that equivalence of qualification pathway, people who cannot qualify in that category will qualify under the standard assessment pathway. Standard assessment pathway means that they will have to first see whether their qualification is at least at a level of a bachelor's higher degree relevant to physiotherapist. Then you will move forward and you will do some examination, written examination. If you clear that, then you will go for clinical examination, practical examination. If you have cleared that, then finally you get a certificate. Ultimately it will help you to get registration as well, uh, which is helping you to find a job over here. The other option you have is if you have current or unconditional general registration with Physiotherapy Board of Australia, then you can qualify. Um, and then finally, if you have got registration through New Zealand Authority, Physiotherapy Board of New Zealand, you can still qualify. So these are the options, and on top of that, you still need to score English requirement, which is generally speaking for most of the health occupation, it's 7. Finally, speech pathologist skills assessment requirements. There are mainly 3 pathways you can look at. First one is for the people who have studied in Australia, a course which is approved, similar to physiotherapist, as we were saying just now. So if you have studied a course which is approved by them, you are eligible. Second option is if you are qualifying under the mutual recognition agreement MRA, signed with some of the countries, for example USA, UK, Canada, Ireland, and New Zealand. If you got mutual recognition agreement from them, like you studied in that country and you are member or you got certificate from them to work as a speech pathologist, then only you will qualify. Or third option is that you have studied anywhere else, which is not Australia, not these countries, any other country, and you have scored a specific English band, which is anyway required. The only important thing is for most of the health occupation, you will see that department, the skill assessment authority, for example, they are accepting OET, IELTS, and for some of the authority they accept even PT, TOEFL, but this is the authority which only accept OET, and they have a specific requirement that you have to score at least 450 to 500 bands in at least 3 subtests and one with at least 350 to 440, and that is specifically only listening or reading. Anyway, that's English requirement. And if you haven't got qualification through that certain countries or Australia, then you're also required to have at least 1,000 hours of work experience as a speech pathologist in last 5 years. If it is more than if you have graduated more than 5 years ago, then that's the requirement. Or if you have minimum of 12 months of practice, which is experience, you that is considering you are a recent graduate, that is within last 5 years you have graduated, 12 months of experience is required. There is no need, there is no specific requirements of how many hours, but if it is more than 5 years, then total 1,000 hours of work experience is required. Um, in that case, a portfolio of evidence which demonstrates skills and knowledge are at least equivalent to standard described in competency-based occupation standards is also required. So now you see that difference of studying a course which is approved or accredited by the relevant authority is much more important, because you will be able to get skills assessment easily. Once you get skills assessment, it will be easier to look for permanent residency pathways. If your qualification is not approved, you will have two problems, one with struggling for permanent residency and the other one is struggling with skills assessment. Ultimately, if you don't get a skills assessment, you are struggling with permanent residency anyway. Only certain visa programs where you don't need a skills assessment, for example, employer sponsored visa 482 leading to 186 into transition stream, that's why you don't need a skills assessment mandatorily. But otherwise, most of the other visas you look at, you need a skills assessment, and that's why you have to make sure that you study a course which is accredited, approved by them. Much more, it will make it much more easier for you to qualify. I think that's pretty much it, end of the session. Whatever questions we have, we will help you with your queries now. Also, before I take questions, as we mentioned earlier, we have contest, that is, share your session insights within the comment and story, and you will have opportunity to earn 500, 300, $250 depending on the prize you are winning. Um,
Thank you so
yeah.
much, Parth. Again, one of the very instructive session with a lot of information to take in. I think we do have a few questions here. I might just read it out and see if one of you can answer this question. So the first one we have here is from Udyogo Anthony. I hope I'm reading your name right here. He's saying, I'm a teacher with BSc in economics and diploma in education who will like to migrate to Australia. Is there hope for such occupation? Any course to boost to meet the eligibility criteria?
Yes, I say, yeah. So as I think the applicant has studied in BS in economics and will have work experience, I think, as a teacher, right?
Yeah.
So in like rather than going towards the economics study and all, in the MBA category, we would highly recommend that applicants who study in teaching. So if they study master in teaching in like early childhood or like a primary school teacher or secondary school teacher, by studying those courses in Australia, they will be able to get their skill assessment as a teacher, and at the same time, they will also able to get the registration as a teacher as well, and they can apply for permanent residency as a teacher, as there are high demand for the teachers, even like as we have seen recent post from like Victorian state government that like they are inviting all the retired teachers to start again, because there is a really high shortage for the teachers into the schools due to COVID. So definitely there are good chances to get the permanent residency as a teacher, but one of the important factors which can affect their application would be IELTS, So after studying their courses like in master, or like if they have studied 2 years study in Australia, they will require IELTS academic score, which is listening, speaking 8 and reading, writing 7. So if you think that if you're able to meet that English language criteria, that's a good option for you to get the permanent residency. There is an exemption available as well. If you study 4 years in Australia, and you can waive the requirement of the IELTS, But if you are studying master, there are less likely that you will able to exam that requirement. So you must need to get the IELTS score and get the skill assessment. And if you get a job in teaching, you will get the permanent residency easily through any different states,
Awesome. So he does have an option. He can come here for Masters of Teaching, as he also has a background with Diploma of Education. So with that background, he can definitely. So you can give us a call, and we can, or one of our education counselors can give you a call in regards to your question, and we'll be able to take it further from there. The next question we have is from Vishal. He's asking any trade course in agriculture field. So probably I might be able to answer this because I'm QAC agent as well. So I can give you an options in horticulture. However, we don't have any such trade occupations in agriculture field. But yes, we do have sub fields, so we do have options in horticulture. The next one we have is the agriculture options you've given. Do we have to do a job ready program or just study is good enough? Need our part.
Yeah, actually, for all the trade occupations we have discussed, it's mandatory to have 1 year of experience if you're going through the job ready program. Or if you already have a few years of experience, as we have discussed, that you can possibly qualify under migration skills assessment or overseas skilled assessment program, OSAP program, where you need more years of experience. But minimum requirement is having 1 year of experience if you would like to go through job ready program. So 1 year study you will finish, which is certificate 3 generally, in relevant field. That's where we also mentioned what courses are generally required if you would like to qualify in that particular occupations. For example, nursery person, then certificate 3 nursery operations is required. If you would like to qualify as a gardener, then certificate 3 in horticulture. And after you complete that, you need 1 year of full-time experience. The good thing is, I think you have heard about that or not, but then earlier it was like, or just until now it was like, if you have studied in Australia for 2 years, and if that course is part of MLTSSL list, like high demand list, then only you were qualified under the 485 visa, which is like 18 months of visa, where you can do job ready program. And that's where you might have seen that hardly people were doing job ready program in gardener, nursery person occupations as such, because their that occupations were not in high demand list for immigration, and they cannot qualify for that 18 months of TR. However, recently department have announced, you might have heard about that, if you have done 2 years of study, no matter what which course it is, whether it's in high demand, low demand, does not matter, you will qualify for 2 years of work visa, for it 5 TR visa. So the benefit is, if you're doing this certificate 3 in gardening or nursery person, as I said, you will still qualify for job ready program. You will have 2 years of visa, so you can work on that visa, and you may meet the state nomination criteria. But make sure that you choose right state where to study, because not every state possibly sponsor this kind of occupations. But I strongly recommend, because these occupations are mainly required in regional areas, so it's better to target um, occupations which are in regional area, because states are sponsoring in that particular areas only.
Thank you so much, Parth. Just to ask you further in this regards, Parth, just wanted to know, so after certificate 3 only they can go ahead and apply for a job, right? The minimum requirement is certificate 3 and not 4.
Correct. So minimum requirement is certificate 3, and then they will have to complete 1 year of full-time experience. Most of the trade occupation requires certificate 3 level qualification. Only few occupations, for example, chef requires certificate 4, or some occupations
Okay.
like dental technician requires diploma. Otherwise most of the trade occupation requires certificate 3.
Okay, that's great to answer. And he's just asking further that what's the difference between a nursery person versus gardener? So there are two different occupation, right? Listed down in the MLTSSL list. So what will be the basic difference between them?
So generally, like in simple terms, if I say gardener generally maintains gardens, parks,
Yeah,
where you will see
nursery person is more sort of trees and plants, I would say.
correct, something like that. So nursery, there will be a different, like when you say, okay, there is a nursery is where generally they grow plants and things like that. But then garden is where you generally get plants from nursery probably, and then you have it there just for a better look or things like that.
Yeah. So I think we have a question from Kame Joy. He's asking, he's 23 from Philippines. Is IELTS required? So I guess if you're planning to come over to Australia, IELTS will be definitely one of the requirement. Or if you have been studying the entire duration of your study period in English medium school, you can apply to certain colleges or institutes with the IELTS waiver by giving the medium of instruction certificate. So there can be an exception. However, IELTS or PTE is a requirement when you are an international student coming to Australia. And the second question we have here is, after completing Bachelor's of Physiotherapy from India with overall 6.3 CGPA and 7.5 bands with one module in 6 bands, what are the best master degree course options with future PR process? So I guess, again, this is an education question. You can definitely come over here with Masters of Physiotherapy, as you've already got the background. And as Nirav and Parth previously explained, that these are one of the niche courses and has good prospects for PR. So Masters of Physiotherapy, they can study with the required band.
And when you are looking for these physiotherapy courses, as I mentioned, it's better to study courses which are approved by the relevant skills assessment authority, because if it is approved, then it will be much more easier for you to qualify in terms of both career wise you will get registration, and in terms of migration also it will be much more easier. So when
Yeah,
you are speaking with education consultant, they will provide you the courses which are approved, so it will be much more easier for you to qualify later on.
sure. We have another one, Benika. She's asking, can I apply for secondary teacher having 15 years of experience?
So yes, so like in terms of teaching, experience actually help in getting points and all, but apart from the experience, one of the main requirement would be study for teaching. So like you should have studied minimum like bachelor qualification, or like the education qualification in teaching, which is having minimum 45 days of training. So if you have done the minimum 45 days of training and 4 years study in total, then like you can apply for the teaching assessment with the IELTS score. So just based on the experience, you might not able to get the skill assessment. So you will require a beneath qualification about the teaching, particularly having the 45 days of training, as a part of that qualification.
Okay, sure. Um, okay, so Kaba, I think he's the one who's asked you the questions before. He's asking if the requirement that you said, Parth, that he can apply for 2 years of TR because it's an MLT SSL list, is only for 2022-23. By the time I will pass, it will be 2023 December. So do you reckon the requirements will be same, or the situations will be same at that point of time?
Actually, department, government, they haven't provided any date, like the deadline that okay, you have to complete the study by this period of time. So it's for anyone. Now onwards, it's like 2 years of visa they will get. I don't remember any deadline provided by the department. Nirav, do you remember anything as such?
No, they have not provided any deadline that it will be for 1 year only. They just say that it is a temporary arrangement. However, they will see why they did the temporary arrangement, because they just want to see that how it will impact, in terms of migration or in terms of fulfilling the labor shortages in Australia, if they provide such option to the students. So if they think that it's really helping Australia to fulfill those vacancies. So I would say that they might do this one permanent as well later on. Okay. So they are just doing this temporary arrangement because of the COVID and labor shortages. But if they think that it is really helping Australia, then they might do permanent. So there is no end date currently, as Parth said.
Sure. Again, Kami is asking question. I'm planning to take childcare course at SCEI. Is it possible for me to enroll there? Kami, please register on the link given in the chat box. And what we'll do is, one of our education counselor will be able to give you a call and give out all the information that you're looking for, and also help you in the admission process. Shweta is asking, Nirav, are there any chances of getting PR with Masters of Public Health because it is not in the skilled occupation list?
No, like primary health organization manager is a part of a public health qualification occupation. So it is there in the occupation list. But to get the skill assessment, you require that level of experience, after completing your study. So either here in Australia, you require 1 year of experience as a health organization manager, or you require 1 year of experience overseas, like in that occupation. So if you get that one, if you get a skill assessment, and if you get your successful skill assessment, then there are good chances to get the permanent residencies as well, through different pathways. So main hurdle in this one would be getting an experience. So if you think that you will be able to crack the experience requirement, then still there is an option available, as the occupation is still there in the occupation list.
Sure. I think Anthony, we started with your question only, so your question was already answered first, but he might have missed it. Nirav, if you can just quickly give a gist on the discussion that we had before, that he's a teacher with BSc in economics and has diploma of education before. I think he missed that part, so he's asking again not to do not forget to ask questions. So.
Yes, yes, yeah, I know, sure. That's so as like we have answered that if you did this, like, if you're working as a teacher and if you studied bachelor in economics and all, so as a personal advice from our side, we should recommend studying and teaching only because studying teaching in master courses like in primary, early childhood, primary school teacher, secondary school teacher, will help you to get the skill assessment in one of the occupation if you meet the English language requirement, which is IELTS academic, listening, speaking 8, and reading, writing 7. So if you meet that English language requirement, you will able to get the assessment. And there are like skill shortages into the teacher, across Australia. So you can get a good chance to get the invite as well. So rather than going on to the economic section or like going towards the management in MBA and all, better to go to the teaching sections as long as you are confident that you will be able to clear your English language requirement. However, there is an exemption as well as if you study 4 years in Australia, you will be exempted from IELTS requirement for the skill assessment. But rather than studying 4 years, if you are capable of getting the IELTS, yeah, and particularly that score, that is a good option. You should go for a Master of Teaching.
Sure. I hope the question is answered here. Guys, we are still here. If you have any more questions, we are here to answer all your questions. Okay, Vishal is again asking, we want to move to regional state, but we are confused. Can you please let me know? My wife finished Masters of Accounting in Victoria, but here it is very hard to get PR. So now I want to start trade course. But can you please explain about the WA state? Also, what is the best way for PR? What is, or Adelaide is the best one? So if you can just answer this question.
Yeah, sure. Look, generally for Western Australia, the program they have started now, they started sponsoring people, but earlier, like a year back, 2 years back, I guess, they were only nominating people who have studied there. And then for a year of time, they also closed the program for even graduates who have studied there. So their program is a bit fluctuating in a way, but we are expecting that they would like to sponsor people. They are also trying to get more quota, sponsoring more people in the state so that they can get more people. So hopefully, I don't see any problem if you would like to study in Western Australia, because you might have seen that even for accountants, they are inviting with much more lesser points if you are living there, working there in Western Australia. So trade occupation is a good option if you would like to study in Western Australia. The only concern with Western Australia in that case is that they says that every year, every financial year, new financial year starts like in July. So at that time, they will publish the occupation list saying that they are only nominating people in that particular occupations. So the problem is, in case if your occupation is not listed there, you cannot qualify for the program. And it may be the possibility by the time you qualify, you never know. Even I don't know. But once you complete your qualification, if your occupation is listed there, consider it's much more easier for you to get state nomination from there, because generally you will only have competition with Western Australia, and in that state you are only targeting mainly Perth, because in regional, like it's much more bigger in terms of area, but then there are not other towns, cities where students are living. That's where the competition will be comparatively lesser. If you look at South Australia, the beauty of South Australia program is that they sponsor each of the occupations. So tomorrow you won't have any concern that they will not sponsor in particularly your occupation. Because of that, the possibility is that they may ask for more years of experience. For example, if you look at South Australia, for example, trade occupations, they ask for 1 year experience, 1.5, 2 years of experience. If you does not have that, if you don't have it, then you cannot qualify for the program. For some of the trade occupations, they are asking for 1 year of experience, particularly in outer regional area, that is outside of Adelaide itself. So, for example, to what I remember, I think for chef, they are not sponsoring people if you are working in Adelaide, for example, for 190 category. So that's the difference, so both state have their plus and minus. But then what I am recommending is, if you go to South Australia, there is certainty at least that you will get 491. If you go to Perth, the good thing is, if your occupation they are sponsoring in, then you will get 491. So that's the difference. But then if your occupation is not listed, which no one knows, what you can probably do is, because I don't exactly know what's the shortage in Perth, but if you look for shortage of trade occupation in Perth, whichever trade occupation you are looking at, see whether that occupation has a strong or moderate demand, which you can go through. If you search for National Skills Commission, something like that, on that website they have listed particularly for particular state that which occupations they are expecting of high shortage in future. So future forecast is much more higher, something like that. So if you are seeing that occupations, your occupation, trade occupation, if it is in moderate to strong demand, then you can target moving to even Perth, even Western Australia.
Thank you so much, Parth. I hope you've received your answer. Now, Anthony is again asking, I'm planning on writing IELTS this year. Will it be advised to focus on skill migration visa for secondary school teacher?
Yes, Anthony, definitely. If you're planning to do your IELTS, that will help it for a skill migration. But again, as I said, for these skill assessment, they will require you to have your qualification in teaching, already. And you should have done minimum 45 days of training as a part of your qualification. So if you meet that requirement already, then if you get a skill, IELTS, then you will able to get the skill assessment easily. But if you have not done that like qualification, which include the training for teaching, then we request you to study that one in Australia, like Master of Teaching, particularly specialized in secondary school teaching. And that will help you to get the skill assessment as a teacher later on. And eventually it will help you to get the permanent residency as a secondary school teacher.
Thank you, Nirav. Khalid is asking, is there any scholarship program for masters which is fully funded and without IELTS? I'm studying chemical engineering in the final year. I'm interested in masters in Australia. Khalid, you'll be contacted by one of our education counselors and they'll give you further information in regards to your question, because there are many universities giving scholarship. However, they might not have fully funded scholarships available, but there are pretty good scholarships up to 50-60%. So you'll be contacted by one of our team members. Anybody else? Okay, so we have another question. Can a dependent person holding 500 visa can apply for PR or TR while they're staying in Australia? If having English score and skill assessment, can we consider whether he or she can, where is it? Okay, so can we consider whether he or she can as an onshore while they're on the stay or through visa supply? So he's a dependent basically and wants to see.
Okay, so look, as long as you are eligible, it does not matter what visa you are holding. If you are holding student visa, visitor visa, whatever visa you are holding, as long as you are eligible for the particular visa which you would like to apply, you can qualify. Your location, generally speaking, it does not matter. Only for some visas, location matters. For example, if you look at partner visa 309, for an example, that visa is a requirement that you must be outside of Australia when you apply. So in that case, you must be outside of Australia. But as long as you are in Australia and the other visa which you are planning to apply, if you are meeting the requirements, then you can apply from wherever you would like to. Even if you are studying, you haven't finished your course, we got students, applicants who got permanent residency or the pathway to permanent residency like regional visas 491, 494, they have been granted the visas even when they were studying or they just started the course as long as they were eligible. So there is no timeline, no deadline as such to apply. It's always advisable to apply as soon as you are eligible, because by the time you wait thinking, okay, I will wait for more points or I will wait for something else, by that time the program requirements may change. So whenever you feel you are eligible, it's strongly recommended, advisable to apply for the program.
Perfect. So Anthony is asking, and to apply for Masters in Education for secondary school, will I need to write IELTS? Yes, you would need one. Now, there are two different courses. There is one course called Masters in Education, as well as there is one course called Masters in Teaching. Now, teaching has a pretty stringent requirements where they have 7788 as part of the entry requirements for you to study the course. Whereas when it comes to Masters of Education, they have a bit lenient requirements when it comes to IELTS or PT. I think the requirement for education will be overall 7, no better than 6, or say overall 6.5, no better than 6. Now, this depends on which university you go ahead with. I'm posting you a link for you all for all your queries in regards to your inquiries. If you have any further questions, feel free to fill up this link, and one of our education counselors or migration agent will be in contact with you for all your questions. We still have another 15 minutes to go, guys. If you have any further questions, feel free to post here.
Also, just to add on that courses, the education and then the teaching course, just to make sure that masters in education, most likely to what I know, will not qualify for skills assessment because that, generally speaking, does not have the teaching placements of 45 days, which is a mandatory requirement in order to get a skills assessment. So if you're also looking at permanent residency pathway, then it's strongly recommended that you do masters of teaching. If you are saying that you cannot score that much for now to start that course, you can come here on Masters of Education, and later on, if you would like to change it to Masters of Teaching, once you get the score or once you become eligible to enroll into the other course, then you can change your course to Masters of Teaching as well.
Any other questions?
Yes, there is a question for you, I think.
Masters of Science in Cybersecurity, how much in AUD should my bank account statement be accepted? Now so it depends on the 1-year course fees plus the living expense in Australia, but that also depends on what is the duration of the visa you're applying for. So again, please feel free to enter the details in the link below and we'll be able to give your answers and one of our education counselors will get back to you. The requirement for the finance is basically 1 year of your course fees if you have more than 1 year exception to apply for the visa. So 1 year course fees plus living expense plus your travel expense, which sums up around, let's say if your course fees is somewhere around 20-25,000, in that case it will come up to 44-45 that you have to show. But then that has got other criteria as well that you need to consider. So please feel free to give us a call or one of our agents will be giving you a call. What is the study option to study trade in Tasmania? There are a lot of study options to avail for the trade courses in Tasmania. Is there any particular course, Vishal, that you are looking forward to study? So Tasmania does have commercial cookery, it has community services, it has automotive. So slowly and gradually, there are many courses available, early childhood, early education and childhood course. Let me know which one you are looking forward to study there. So for you all, let's say if you have missed out on asking any of the questions, or let's say after some time you may remember that I have these questions which I really need to ask. We have this session recorded and we'll be uploading this on YouTube. So you can post all your questions and queries in the form given and we'll be in contact with you shortly. Any other questions we have here? We have another 10 minutes to go. Yeah, so we have. Yes, Shweta, what is your question? As you said, I was eligible for Masters of Physiotherapy with 6.3 CGPA. Let me know how much money I have to spend on Masters and the completion with 50% scholarship. Khalid, it totally depends on which university or which course you go ahead with, because there are a lot of masters available. It starts from the basic of 10,000 or 11,000 per semester and goes up to 17, 18,000 per semester. So it totally depends on which one you're looking for. As I said, one of our education counselors will be better off to give you an answer for this. Shweta, that's correct, because sometimes what happens is every university have their own criteria. Now, if you're talking about particular university, that university may have. There are also other criteria when it comes to admission process. Now, let's say if you've got less CGPA, but then you have reasons to justify, or let's say if you have other factors that you can overshadow your score, we can apply and see if we can get into any of the university for the admission process. Vishal is asking here, I'm looking for a short course which finishes early and then I apply for PR, but I have a worry about job ready program. Is it very hard to get the job ready program in Tasmania? Path, you're mute.
Sorry. So it actually it's advisable that you first look at the job market and see which occupation you can find job in, and then accordingly you can do the job like the trade program. Because if you do one trade program now and after 1 year you found out that you are not getting a job in that occupation because there is no shortage of people and offering job, things like that, it is again, in a way, it's like if you're looking at migration perspective and that's where you've done the course, and if you're not getting that job ready program, that experience, then that course is waste in a way. So it's strongly recommended that you look at job market there in Tasmania, in which occupation, trade occupation, there are more jobs, which occupation you have interest in, because ultimately if you have interest, somehow you will get a job, because that's why the occupation is needed in the state, otherwise they won't sponsor. So or whatever occupation they are sponsoring in, they always have a demand. It's just that if you tell that okay, there are a lot of people applying for the jobs, then there is a competition. If you prove that you have that much of skills, you may be able to secure job instead of someone else, and that way it can work out. So interest and the job market, that's what makes a much more difference. But then I think that way you should start looking at the options, the course options.
True. Okay, Anthony, I can apply for a Masters of Teaching. Which visa should I focus on? So basically, you have to apply for a student visa here to study your course and how long the program takes. So the program usually is for 2 years. Any further questions, guys? Do not forget to leave your feedback on our post on Facebook. That will avail you to give and earn more prizes. So your feedback is really, really important for all of us. Okay, so someone is asking, is there a prospect for agriculture?
Yeah, there is a good prospect. That's why we are talking about the courses.
Yeah.
But then it's like agri. If you look at the top industries, which is getting like which is helping in GDP or helping in economy in Australia, agriculture, farming, that is one of the top, I think, three sector as such. And if it is so, then obviously there will be a high shortage of people in that occupations. However, not many people are qualified because they haven't got relevant qualification. They may start working in farm, for example, but then they don't have relevant study, and that's why they look at lower level qualifications. Sorry, occupations, for example, like gardener or nursery person, the primary product inspector, agricultural technicians, that kind of occupations they look at. But if you have got higher degree, bachelor's degree, you may qualify under agricultural scientist, consultant, farmers even, that has much more higher shortage of. And if you look at that occupation, because not many people qualify, that's why the state governments, most of the state governments, you look at even Victoria, they sponsor agricultural scientist, consultant much more easier than any other occupation. So if you, at one time before COVID, and even during COVID, if you have looked into this occupation, agricultural scientist, consultant, and for example, before COVID, when Victoria was sponsoring nurses, the requirements for nurses and agricultural consultant were similar, just having 6 bends in each, in which is a minimum requirement to qualify for the point tested visa. Victoria was sponsoring agricultural scientists and consultants as such. Same with New South Wales. If you look at, not many people qualify, that's why they will easily sponsor. So ultimately, I think finding job, because few people, like I got some clients who got skills assessment in that occupation, and they are pretty much all working in the relevant field, doing some research, working in agricultural scientist like category, or even the consultant category. They are getting jobs, like much more jobs in regional areas. But not many people choose, because probably they don't want to move to regional area because they have spent some time over here, or not many people would like to do that kind of courses because it takes more time, or a bachelor's degree is required, things like that. But if you are in early stages, you would like to develop career as well, then I think that is the right course to do in agriculture, which will help you in both ways, career and permanent residency prospects as well.
Yeah. And we have, so I have a farm in my country and I'm thinking to migrate to Australia. What can I do? So I guess in this regards, you need to have a qualification for you to come here or on a student visa, or you have, if you've got a good qualification in regards to your own field, you can apply for a direct skill assessment and have a future PR pathways. We need to see your resume here. So his master's in agriculture food business in University of Adelaide lead to an agriculture consultant, or agriculture can lead to agriculture consultant. And can same the degree help with the fruit grower as my uncle has a farm in regional asset? That's a very good question, Parth or Nira, whoever can answer this.
Yeah, so master in agri food business, that usually in terms of not only technical but towards the business prospects as well, like management prospects of the agriculture industry. So agriculture consultant can be considered, this qualification as relevant to the occupation. But in terms of like fruit grower and all, you can still consider in this one, but the experience requirement may be a little bit higher rather than 1 year experience requirement to get the skill assessment. But that we can easily get to know after doing like skill assessment with the, provisional skill assessment with wet assess, to consider that which occupation you can meet the specific requirement. But they have a skill assessment support criteria as well, of the application, where they can also guide us straight away based on your qualification and assess your qualification and provide a recommendation as well in one of that category. But I would say, like, if you have that study and if you work in one of that occupation, there are chances that it can lead to a skill migration later on. No?
Sure.
Just to add on that, generally for the consultant role, they generally expect agricultural science study, animal science, crop science, agronomy, viticulture, plant and animal production. Also on top of that, some other qualifications like you were saying, food science. On a case-to-case basis, depending on what kind of job you are doing, they can consider it as a relevant, like biotechnology, veterinary science, biochemistry, biological, life science, things like that, which is not exactly like agricultural itself. But then depending on what kind of job you are doing, for example, if you're working in a research laboratory where you are studying on living like the plants, for example, they may still consider that, again, depending on case to case basis, they may consider it as relevant qualification. However, if you would not like to go for higher qualification, and another thing is this agricultural scientist and consultant being in that group A category, you need no matter what relevant qualification plus 1 year experience. More years of experience won't help to get a skills assessment. But if you don't want to study something which is at a higher level, you may look at studying something as certificate for diploma in horticulture, which can qualify you under primary product inspector or agricultural technician, or even like the nursery person related occupation. Nursery person will be difficult, but then primary product inspector and then agricultural technicians, you can qualify with that certificate 3 4 kind of qualifications, or diploma qualification if it is diploma in horticulture production, something like that.
Thank you so much, Nirav and Parth. Okay, so we have how much does a student visa rejection affects the overall profile, and will my visa file be affected if I get the visa rejections from universities? University rejection and the visa rejection from immigration is two different things, Shweta, when it comes to university rejections. So this is like normal application that you do to university. If they're not happy to take you as a student, you apply to another university. You don't have to say that you've been rejected with one university, with second university, with third. It can be a different purpose for all the universities. So if your profile is good to go, there won't be any universities rejecting the profiles, because universities have been pretty accommodating when it comes to the admission process. However, when it comes to immigration with the student visa rejection, yes, it does affect the overall file. However, we do have a session of genuine temporary entrant criteria on the day 5th, which is on Friday. And I'll really suggest you to please attend the session, because that is in too much detail and I won't be able to give you out all the information right now. So it'll be good if you can attend the session. You'll be get much more information. And I think you are already filling up the form for all your questions. So if you can just fill up the form and we'll be in contact with you again. Alex is asking, how about civil structural engineering? Do you provide any assistance to these candidates? So we provide assistance in all sort of student visa or education inquiries, as well as all the skill assessment, future PR pathways by our migration agents. So whatever service you're looking for, we are able to give you any of these that I said before. And is there a diploma in teaching course? Parth, would you be like to answer this, because the diploma in teaching course, would that give him a skill assessment?
No, that won't qualify for the skills assessment. For the skills assessment for teaching, there are, I think, four basic requirements. The first basic requirement is that you must have studied at least 4 years at a university level, or at least at a level of advanced diploma. If you have studied 4 years of study, you can combine multiple study. For example, if you have done a bachelor's degree, which is 3 years, and if you have done 1 year advanced diploma, you can combine that two to make it 4 year study. So in short, total 4 years of study is required. Secondly, at least 1 year of study in teaching is required, but that study must be at least at a level of a bachelor's degree or higher. And that's why if you do diploma of teaching, you will not qualify. You will need a bachelor or higher graduate diploma in teaching if it is available. And thirdly, the teaching course which you are doing, that 1 year or more, that teaching course must have 45 days of teaching practice. And finally, the English requirement, which is 7 in reading, writing, and 8 in listening, speaking of IELTS academic version. That English requirements may be exempted if you have studied 4 years in certain countries, for example, Australia.
Yeah. And we have, can we apply for, guess I think this will be the last question that we'll be taking for now. Looks like they don't have any further questions. Yeah. And probably we are about to finish the session as well. So last question is, can we apply for a microbiologist occupation if working on water sector, working in water packaging plant in micro lab? So microbiologist occupation, is it in the PR list, is basically what his question is. And what will be the options for him?
Yes, I think Sakti, yes, that's occupation is also like in the skilled occupation list. So whenever you are applying for like skill assessment, let's say microbiologist, if that is assessed with wet assess, what they require that you should have a relevant qualification to that occupation, which is highly relevant or highly specialized into that occupation. And they require a certain duties, which is as per 𝐬𝐬𝐢𝐴𝐻 guideline. So you should be performing those duties as per 𝐬𝐬𝐢𝐴𝐻 guideline. And if you're performing those duties as per microbiologist, and if you have a relevant qualification, which meets the skill assessment requirement, then you can get the skill assessment as a microbiologist. So it is subject to what you have studied and what you will be working specifically for those duties. You can get the skill assessment.
Sure. And just to sum it up, I think there's one last question. Can you put someone through the applying for skill assessment? We can. So basically, any of our Mara agents will be able to help you out with skill assessment. So we have Nirav and Parth, who are one of the most experienced agents that we have here at Aussizz Group. So you can contact any of them, and they'll be able to assist you in regards to your question. I guess there are no further questions that are pending. If you guys have any other questions, as I said, feel free to post even after this session, because you'll still get a link and the video will be uploaded on the YouTube. Just to wrap it up, thank you so much, you all, for attending the session. Don't forget to leave a review for this session. It is already been shared in the chat box many times. Your feedback is highly, highly appreciated. Don't miss out on our next info sessions on the very exciting topics. So today is the end of day one of our summit. However, we do have tomorrow's summit sessions. Basically, tomorrow's session will include health and nursing program, community services, teaching and social works, career pathways, skill assessment, and future state pathways. So don't miss out on the information given by one of our experienced Mara agents or a QX certified education agent. So again, bumper cash prize contest. Do not forget that. Make sure you do leave a feedback and do leave a detailed feedback, so you can avail the prize. That's it from me. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Parth and Nirav, for being wonderful and giving us all the information that you can.
No
Thank
worries.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.